My name's Mars, and I didn't really like this book that much. This review will be mostly spoiler-free. I think there's going to be one comment that I make about it that's going to have spoilers in it. But I'll let you know. I'll put a text box that says spoiler right here, or wherever I decide to put it. And so you'll just be able to mute and skip all the way past it. So that way you don't have to just trash the whole video. This book, if you don't already know, is The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee ahdieh. I am now realizing that I could have probably looked up how to pronounce all the names I'm about to say. Should I do it? Maybe. So I'm not going to be able to pronounce these names exactly correct, as I don't speak the language that these names come from, or stem from, if you will. So I won't be able to pronounce them super adequately, but I'm gonna do my best. Okay, so this book is essentially a sort of retelling of A Thousand Splendid Suns. That's a different book. 1000 Arabian Nights, or 1001 Nights. I've heard both. It's essentially supposed to be like an enemies to lovers type of deal. My overall consensus of this book was that I was very bored. I'm gonna go put it down now. I was very bored throughout the book. This isn't a rant review, finally. For the first time in my YouTube career, a very short one, it is my first not rant review. I didn't hate it. I'm not angry about it. Nothing angered me. But I also didn't have many emotions towards it to even start. I thought it was a very boring book. Reading it was kind of tough because I'd be sitting there a little bit bored out of my mind. And the only reason I would keep reading it was because I kept thinking something was gonna happen to make me interested. So I would keep reading, waiting for that moment, and then it would kind of happen a little bit, like right at the end of the chapter, and then the next chapter would be completely boring. It would start at, there would be no hook in the beginning of the chapter. It would just kind of go to a different point of view and be kind of boring. I wouldn't be able to get sucked back into the story, and then I would keep reading it because I wanted to know what was gonna happen. And then it was anticlimactic, and it was just like I said, it was just boring overall. I want to give some points on why it was boring. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my phone. I wasn't attached to any characters. I felt like I didn't spend a lot of time with any one character. I feel like a little bit it hopped a few points of view. Of course, the character that I was able to get most attached to was Shahrazad, but even then I didn't really feel attached to her character. So there's this trope that I don't really like when it comes to books, and it's the trope of the person who can do no wrong. So in essence, they're perfect in every single way, without flaw, and they're special. For example, this is right in the beginning, so it's not a spoiler. It's pretty much right out the bat, but you know what, just in case, I'm gonna call it a spoiler. Essentially, Shahrazad is treated special because she's the first and only woman that the king ever comes back and sees at night, which is the only reason that she gets to tell her stories to him. And I don't really like that, because that implies that if it hadn't been for her specialness, she would not have been able to get to where she had gotten. And I don't really appreciate that. I would have liked it better if all of the girls had equal opportunity to pull off what Shahrazad pulled off, or else it's a bit unrealistic to me and it takes me out of the story a bit, because again, she's just this special creature who can do no wrong, and it's kind of, bland. Okay, so another thing that I can see why people would appreciate this, but I personally didn't, was that there are a lot of descriptors in this book. So the author went on to describe things in great detail, which I can fully understand why a lot of people would love that, but I personally don't have the attention span for it, so I would lose myself in the descriptions a bit because I just didn't really care, or I didn't feel like I needed the descriptions. But that's just me. Throughout the book, I was getting no chemistry from any of the characters. There were several romances in this book, and I didn't feel an ounce of chemistry for any of the romances, if I'm gonna be honest. I didn't feel attached to the romances. I didn't feel like there was much chemistry being channeled through the both of them. I didn't want anyone together. I didn't really have an attachment to any of the relationships. I didn't care if they were solid. I didn't care if they broke up. I really just didn't care. I mean, I know that there's a sequel to this book, But in this first book, there were a lot of storylines that seemed a bit unnecessary and weren't really played out. I'm not going to go into detail about them, but they seemed kind of like a waste of pages. Again, I understand that there's a sequel and it could be touched upon in the sequel, but I personally don't enjoy when I have to read the sequel in order to get the rest of a storyline that was introduced in the first book, especially when it's a very minor storyline and not like the main storyline. Does that make sense? Like, it was just something that felt brought in for nothing and I didn't really have an attachment to it, so I wouldn't even read the second book to figure out what happened, if that makes sense. Like I mentioned before, the book has a lot of romances. So at one point there's kind of like a love triangle sort of situation going on, and honestly I didn't really like it because it came in to make Shahrazad seem a bit more flawless, you know, like everyone was just in love with her and no one had anything bad to say about her, which I thought was unrealistic about a person. Everyone was enveloped in her being and her presence, and I thought it was a bit unrealistic. I don't think that people can be that perfect in life and have that many people just die for them or willing to die for them. No one dies for her, but they're willing to, and it's kind of, it takes me out of the story because no one's that perfect. So like I said before, this book was supposed to be enemies to lovers. A big issue I have with enemies to lovers is sometimes there's hardly any enemies and it just kind of goes straight to lovers. Like, yeah, it's introduced that they hate them before, but as soon as they actually spend time together, they suddenly are in love with each other. But I feel like that's not realistic. I feel like there's still time that needs to be spent like kind of still having this hatred and then eventually like letting go of the hatred and then falling in love. But really it's just kind of like hate, love, period, you know, and it's not very interesting at all. Like it doesn't seem like there's much of a fight put up because you hated them once and you're not really fighting not to like them. You just like them, and that's just, it was just kind of so boring, you know, like it's kind of like you get immediate gratification, and in this particular book I didn't think that that was a good route to take. At one point Shahrazad gets jealous of the king's cousin, and I know she's his cousin, and there might be a situation where they're not technically related, which I won't go into, and maybe it's just my fault for not remembering the specifics, but I just found it a little bit uncomfortable that she got jealous of his cousin because they're related. And I understand that when it comes to royalty, a lot of people do marry into their families to keep the royalty in the family. However, I don't know, I just personally found it to be an unnecessary storyline. Again, I didn't really think it was a good way to go. It was also very quickly played out. It was just kind of unnecessary and an unnecessary discomfort to have, you know. Sometimes there are necessary discomforts in books because that's the plot, but I thought it was a little bit unnecessary to endure it. One more thing before I get into the spoiler, which is kind of just an opinion really. I mean, all of this is an opinion obviously, but specifically this is just an opinion fully. One of Shahrazad's love interests, Tariq, he annoys me so much. Like, he's just so annoying. Like, I could not stand it whenever I had to read his parts. I was just like, man, please just leave. I don't want to read you. I don't want to deal with it anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm good. That's cool. We're done. I'm done here. Thanks though. So for the spoilers, there is this one part in which a group of assassins comes through the kingdom and manages to kill every single guard in Shahrazad's hallway, which is so dumb in my opinion, because these are royal guards. Royal guards! And they got killed by a group of assassins that they outnumbered. What kind of guards did the king hire, dude? Were they that bad that they couldn't like, their job is to keep the royal... I'm sorry, anyone could have killed the king then. Like, if anyone wanted to kill the king, they could have done it a long time ago if this is the case. Which is a very big point in the whole story, is that no one likes the king. So I just find it a bit unrealistic that a group of assassins one time went into the castle and managed to kill a whole hallway of royal guards. Bullshit, period. No. Okay, so I don't know if this was really a joke or not for Shahrazad, but at one point she gets possessive with the king. She's like saying all these possessive words and it's kind of annoying, you know. Possessiveness, always a fun time. But then the king gets possessive back and she's like kind of mad at him, like, ew, I don't like that you're possessive. And I was like, dude, you were just possessive. What What do you mean? You can't just decide who's allowed to be possessive. Anyway, that annoyed me. It was kind of a spoiler. So that's my consensus of the book. I didn't really like it. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, which meant that it was like an okay book. It wasn't all bad, but it really wasn't that great. Another thing, if I ever don't post a video, it's because I don't have an idea for a video, or if there's things going on in my life. As I've said before, this isn't a #1 priority for me, it's just a hobby. So at times I'm not going to be able to post, and that's just kind of how it's gonna be. I don't want you to feel disappointed. I don't want you to feel upset. I also wanted to say thank you for 20 subscribers. I know that's not a lot, but 20, in my opinion, I didn't really expect more than 10. So it's kind of exciting, kind of a thrill, you know, thank you. Also, my Will Grayson rant review has been getting a bit of attention lately, which is so cool. Like, thanks. Thank you for hearing me, and thank you for listening to me get mad about something so petty and like useless. It's kind of nice. Also, I hate outros.